Thank you for tuning into the Pre-Patch Podcast. And check out these patch notes.
All right. Game of the year. Here we go. Recognizing a game that develops the absolute and best experience across all creative and technical fields. Nominees: Alan Wake 2, Baldur's Gate 3, Marvel Spider-Man 2, Resident Evil 4, Super Mario Bros. Wonder, and Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom. Baldur's Gate 3 takes this category hands down.
100%.
I mean, it does.
I think it'll be Spider-Man 2 personally, but yeah, I think Baldur's Gate 3 deserves it more.
Definitely.
I do think Spider-Man could take this category, though. I do think that this is
I think it'll take it just because it's a Sony game. But
it's gonna burn a bit if they do, because I do believe Baldur's Gate 3 deserves it.
I think that they're gonna look at the fact that they have the Baldur's Gate 3 just won a shit ton of golden joysticks awards, and they're gonna be like, oh well, they've got enough. We can give it to Marvel.
I don't know, man. If they do that, if they do that, it completely illegitimizes this entire gaming.
Yeah,
like
so
game of the years
past, Sony has taken so many awards and they haven't batted an eye. So,
are we talking about game of the year specifically? Sony's only won 3 game of the year awards ever.
With not just game of the year category awards, other awards like for Last of Us and.
I mean, Last of Us 1, Last of Us 2, and God of War are the only Sony games that have won awards.
Yeah,
and Last of Us 2 shouldn't have won.
And it shouldn't have. You're correct there.
I'm just saying, in years past, they've taken many awards. I'm not just speaking game of the year specifically.
I don't even give a fuck about the Sony aspect or not. I mean, I think Marvel Spider-Man 2 is a phenomenal game. I think that it has a phenomenal storyline. What?
It's the same game that they released. Marvel Spider-Man 1 is the same game as Marvel Spider-Man 2. It just has a different story.
What circuits are you smoking? You're crazy.
Oh my god.
No, absolutely not.
Oh my god, dude.
I've heard it's legitimately a pretty good game.
It's a fucking phenomenal game. The story is phenomenal. Like
I'm not arguing that. I'm just saying that the mechanics behind Spider-Man 1 and Spider-Man 2 are the exact same mechanics. They've done very little work on it.
Okay,
I'm with Enigma on this one.
Push forward. It's like the God of War versus God of War Ragnarok.
The category is saying recognizing a game that delivers the absolute best experience across all creative and technical fields. It doesn't say that it needs to be new or innovative. And you think that the best experience is the same shit that you got last year? Why would I? If I love vanilla ice cream, why the fuck would I get any? Why would I get chocolate? Like if it's good,
that's
why
how you
make
stagnate
it
an industry, my friend?
You are still playing World of Warcraft Classic, I suppose. So that makes sense.
You said you play World of Warcraft Classic, you dick. Anyway.
Marvel Spider-Man 2 it has the same problem that God of War Ragnarok has, where it's an extremely safe sequel. Like,
Bill,
it is.
Look at that. Look at that. We connected, bro. Look at that. Now agree with me that Resident Evil as a remake should not be on here.
We're talking about Spider-Man right now.
Don't get too ahead of yourself, okay?
I don't know how
while it is good, and it is extremely good for that genre, I don't really care about superhero games that much. It is an extremely safe sequel. They didn't do much to differentiate it from Miles Morales or Spider-Man 1, other than putting both characters and plugging them into the same game.
Other than the GTA 5 Switch, which has been around for
it's a great
7.5
fucking
years.
game, man.
Nobody's arguing that, but we're saying that it's not. It hasn't pushed forward anything.
I didn't say that it did. I'm just saying it could win this fucking category.
It could,
and we're saying that it shouldn't.
Yeah, I don't know why Mario Wonder's on here. Like, it's a good game, but it's 2D Mario. They added some new mechanics to it that are pretty neat, but it is not the absolute best. It might be the absolute best 2D side scroller that's came out this year, but
it's very possible.
It's a weird one to include here.
I'm also of the same opinion as The Legend of Zelda. I don't think that it did a whole lot to push forward the Legend of Zelda franchise, other than add the crafting system or whatever it is, like the building system, which is great. It's phenomenal. It's a great addition, but from everything that I've heard, they've literally added in a few quality of life improvements and the building system. And it's like literally the same thing
with Spider-Man, like pretty much the same game.
I feel like Zelda has changed the formula from Breath of the Wild a lot more than what Spider-Man did.
Yeah.
In the fact that, yes, the building mechanic, while it is one mechanic, the powers that they added,
it's a big mechanic,
and it is a huge mechanic, but I think this category I've said it from the beginning of the year and I still say it now is between Baldur's Gate 3 and Zelda. I think those are the two competing games for this.
I'll agree with that.
And they compete for the exact same reason. They compete because both of those games expanded what player choice means in a video game. Those two games embody player choice more than any game that we have seen probably in the last decade in two entirely different ways. Baldur's Gate 3 through choice, through
the endings,
creativity, through endings, through like it's the total package in that regard.
Narrative.
And Zelda honestly does the same thing. It's not as narratively driven, but you can still solve your problems in that game. You can solve the puzzles in that game. You can get from point A to point B in almost any way that you want to. It's the whole if you can think it, you can do it mentality, and both of those games embody that better than anything.
And you know what we always think of? Robot dicks, because that's what gets created in Zelda.
Robot dicks.
It is.
Exactly.
It is.
All right.
Okay, Resident Evil 4, why is it here?
Oh, God, okay.
Right?
So we got more to talk about.
Yes, okay. It's not over yet.
So Resident Evil 4 Remake, I don't give a shit how good it is. I don't give a shit how much they changed. It could be a completely different game. Sir, I don't think it deserves Game of the Year.
I will agree with you when you said
I don't think it deserves a nomination.
Starfield deserves a nomination over RE4. I agree with that. I do.
Well, and so I'll walk back on that honestly, because I kind of retrospectively thought about it. Right, I can see, and now that I saw that Starfield actually did get a nomination, I think that was the big. Yeah, I think that was the biggest thing that was pissing me off. Was I was like, you got to be kidding me that Starfield did not get a single fucking nomination.
I mean, even
it's because Starfield didn't. It sold well, and we talked about that extensively in the chat. It sold well. It got a lot of Game Pass.
It got a lot of Game Pass, and it had a lot of people that enjoyed it. Like a lot of people did enjoy the game.
They did.
Did they?
But I did some research into it. It currently has less concurrent players than what Elden Ring did last year, and Elden Ring hasn't put out any new content
in that game. Yeah,
like the drop was fairly massive.
I'm not going to argue with that. Yeah, it's a what's called a Bethesda game. They always have.
And all I'm saying, I do still just agree
that's spicy.
Yeah, what?
That's chat.
So okay,
somebody ban him. Somebody ban him.
Don't ban Tom. He's my buddy.
Thomas Brown said in chat.
He ain't wrong, man.
Starfield is as much of a remake as RE4 is. It's Skyrim in space.
He's not wrong.
So
how about?
I mean, I would argue he is wrong, but that's
the
just
defense I want to have for RE4 remake is they evolved the game. They changed the narrative up enough to make it fresh. They changed the gameplay up enough that it is an entirely new gameplay experience. The gameplay loop is completely different than what the original game had. Graphically, obviously, that's fine. But you also have to remember that there are a lot of people that this is going to be their first taste of RE4. And you have to keep those people in mind with this kind of stuff. Like, yes, it is using assets, but it is not like a standard remaster where it is literally just a texture upgrade and then they report the exact same game. This is rebuilt. This is redesigned. This is entirely new mechanics, entirely new level design that was not in the original. Yes, they are narrative aspects that are the same, but I would argue that this is more different than what a lot of sequels do, like Spider-Man 2, like compared to Spider-Man 1 and Miles Morales, like God of War compared to God of War Ragnarok. So the gameplay loops are basically copy pasted in those games where the narrative is different. The narrative is, while altered, roughly the same. You still get from point A to point B and it's the same stuff, but everything else is remade and made better.
So if this was Final Fantasy VII, the remaster or the remake or whatever they call it, reimagination or whatever, what is it? Fantasy VII Reimagined? It's
Final Fantasy VII remake, but they completely changed the narrative and the gameplay.
If this was Final Fantasy VII, the remake or whatever you want to call it, right? If this was Final Fantasy 7, I would have no issue because like
I mean,
you
didn't
said,
have an
Final
issue
Fantasy
last
7,
year
yeah,
because it was
I
on.
didn't. If
or
this was
whenever it
Final
came
Fantasy
out.
7 and this had that amount, or I shouldn't say if this was if this had that amount, Final Fantasy 7's amount of alteration to where it was a completely new game, there was nothing about it that was the same, or very 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 small amounts of it that was the same, right? I wouldn't have as much of an issue with it. But the fact of the matter is that, like, as you said, a lot of the narrative situations, you know, are all the same, or close to the same, at least from what I remember you talking.
They're
the last time
greatly
we talked about
expanded
it.
upon. I think is the
expanded
biggest.
upon, or otherwise, it's still very akin to the original game, right? Granted, yes, I will agree with you. I think that they did a phenomenal job with like the rehash of like the visuals and the gameplay and everything like that in comparison to what RE4 originally was. But like you're not going too far off that. The original one was kind of rough in the first place, right? I still don't feel like it's game of the year material, regardless if it was a remake or not. If this was a brand new game, I don't feel like it's game of the year material.
I definitely think
you're both fucking wrong. Marvel Spider-Man 2 wins it. Shut the fuck up.
I honestly, what I'm most shocked about is that we have 2 horror games in Game of the Year category.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. I don't know. I don't necessarily understand why Alan Wake is in there either. I don't. I'm kind of the same way.
Good. It's
Alan Wake 2.
So fucking
Alan
good.
Wake 2 is solid. For me personally, I would pull Mario Wonder and inject Final Fantasy 16, even though I'm aware
that was my biggest issue. Was like I was just curious why 16 didn't get a vote.
Yeah,
you know, because I do feel like 16
well
was a better option.
It's a similar situation to Starfield, where while the game has people that enjoyed it, such as myself, such as you with Starfield, it was not as well received globally and by its own community as the developers hoped it would be.
I think we just put fucking Elden Ring back in here. I don't understand what the fucking problem is there.
Yeah, we can just contact his Bill Clinton, his what's it called, Rabbi?
Yeah.
I don't know. That's my opinion. Hate me for it if you have to. I don't really give a fuck. You can do whatever you want to.
I think. Yeah.
I think your opinion's fine. You're agreeing with him?
No, I think your opinion's fine, and I think honestly, you probably have the majority opinion as opposed to what I'm trying to.
The only thing that I will say is that like I can't think of a game.
The only two remake
other than Final Fantasy 16 and other than Starfield that I would personally put in there, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. And
as far as
again,
remakes
Starfield, I can like firsthand be like, okay, yeah, Starfield was not game of the year contention. Like it wasn't. I can say that. I enjoyed it thoroughly. Don't get me wrong, but it had a lot of glaring issues.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, definitely.
Armored Core 6 could have been.
That's actually I did say that at one point. Armored Core would have been a great contention for that, honestly.
Yeah, I think the game's too niche. Even with the popularity of the Souls boys, I think
it definitely is.
It's still too niche of a genre.
Son of a bitch. That's what Thomas Browson is saying the entire time. I thought I was like, Assassin's Creed 6.
I thought he meant Assassin's Creed. Yeah, I was like, wait, when did Assassin's Creed 6 go down?
Yeah,
I thought he was just memeing, dude. I was like, what?
Okay.
One last step though with the remake thing, and this is where I'm going to end it. The Resident Evil remakes and the Final Fantasy remake series are the only 2 remakes that I feel like are of quality to deserve to be put into categories such as this. I think the Dead Space remake would not have been enough. I think Demon Souls, definitely not enough. Like those style remakes, while they are rebuilt from the ground up, they barely change anything about it.
Wasn't Dead Space a remaster? It wasn't a remake.
No, it was a remake.
It's a full shot for shot, moment for moment remake.
Full shot for. But it was like what Demon Souls was, where it was shot for shot.
I've heard it's great.
They just made you able to explore the ship.
I'm gonna say,
honestly, I think that they.
I'm gonna say, and I stand by my idea, thinking they should just add a category for remakes.
That's what I was gonna say. Yeah, they need a remaster or remake.
We're going down this
remasters don't deserve shit.
Sure, maybe not, but they still get lumped in with remakes. So if anything, they still just need a category because every year we're going into having.
It seems like we're getting more and more every year.
Yeah, remaking and remastering these games, and it's only going to go up because there's tons of games in the backlog that I'm sure they already have their eyes set on. So just add a new category for it, right? Like I think that just
there's a couple of different categories that need to be added. Honestly, like there needs to be a horror game category. There needs to be a remake or a remaster category for sure.
Okay, yeah, definitely remaster or remake.
I think you guys should get an award because there is very few people that can have an entire conversation and shut me the hell up and keep me quiet. And y'all done it. So congratulations.
Thank you for checking out the patch notes. If you enjoyed this small selection from our podcast, come and join us every other Thursday at 10:30 p.m. Eastern for the full, unfiltered pre-patch podcast. And make sure you check out all of our past shows on anchor.fm/prepatch podcast.